Hello everybody, and welcome to the second of our psychology series of webinars taking place this morning. And welcome to the second of our webinar series taking place today. My name is Jane Whitmore, and I'm also one of the careers consultants here at Manchester University, with particular responsibility for dealing with students from the School of Psychological Sciences. Now, this webinar is intended to be a really quick run-through some of our top tips for gaining relevant experience for entering into some of the more competitive areas of chartered psychology. I'll be sharing with you some of the most useful websites and additional strategies for helping you to build up experience following graduation, so that you're going to have the best possible chance of getting a place on an accredited training course and beyond. I should let you know that this session is being recorded, and what we will do is we can email you a copy of it after today, so that you have it to refer to after the event. And also, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take those at the end of the session. Now, I've got a lot to go through, so I'll try and cover it as quickly as I can. So what am I covering today? Well, I've decided just to focus on some of perhaps the most popular areas of chartered psychology. And I think it's fair to say that, as you know, getting work experience is crucial if you want to enter one of these psychology professional pathways. We're going to be looking at experience related to clinical counselling, health, forensic, educational and occupational, which is quite a lot to get through. So apologies if you're interested in sport or neuropsychology, but those are covered in our starting point booklet, Career Options for Psychology. Okay. The information that I'm going to be covering is also going to be useful to you if you're thinking, well, I'm not absolutely sure if this is what I want to do, but I know I'm broadly interested in health, education, social welfare, or possibly even more commercial applications. So hopefully the experience that I'm talking about is relevant for both chartered and other areas. Now, you probably know that formal structured work placements or internships are rarely advertised in the way they are for other areas of work. So you're going to need to be proactive and creative in your search for opportunities. This means using a variety of resources to help find opportunities, being prepared to make speculative approaches to organisations, and obviously to undertake voluntary or unpaid work when you're getting started and building up that experience. You're going to need to be persistent too and patient when it comes to seeking work. If you're making speculative approaches, you won't always receive a reply, but don't be put off. Your application may be held on file and considered when a suitable opportunity becomes available. The organisations and websites listed here should provide you with starting points to obtaining work experience, both during and after your degree, as you're heading towards graduation now. The key thing to say is that there are hundreds of opportunities for you to gain relevant experience, but the best place always to start is by thinking about something you're passionate about or a special interest you may have. Then start to look for experience in this area or with this client group. It's got to be a way of narrowing down your search, as there are so many opportunities, particularly if you're staying in a big city like Manchester or London or Birmingham, etc. I would say as well, if you're serious about making a commitment to your profession, the profession of chartered psychology, it's also worth considering becoming a member of the BPS. To join the BPS as a student, it costs you £21. Now, if you're working as a graduate, it goes up considerably to £126. But it's £31 if you're a postgrad. And what do you get for that? Well, you do get access to information about conferences, research that's going on, all of the vacancies, and generally you get professional membership to put on your CV and applications, which again, if you're looking for work experience, it shows a potential employer that you are serious about your profession. Gaining work experience is a step process, and starting with volunteering and building up to paid roles, well, everyone has to do it. So don't expect to be in a hurry to get there. This is going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so I'm going to focus on clinical and counselling and health, very, very quickly covering all of them together. Requirements for courses do vary, so clearly you've got to check with course providers on what exactly they say they're looking for. The most sought after experience for clinical psychology is that of an assistant psychologist or a research assistant. Now in the UK, more than 90% of applicants for the DClin Psych have worked as assistant psychologists or research assistants. There's a high level of competition for these posts, so it's important to think about gaining relevant experience as soon as you decide this is your preferred career path. Always check out the clearinghouses, and the clearinghouse for postgrad clinical psychology gives you a lot of information about what they consider to be relevant experience. On average, it can take 3 years after graduation for clinical to gain entry onto the clinical psychology doctorate, and the average applicant is around 26 years of age. So see what I mean about not being in a hurry. This is a bit of a marathon rather than a sprint to build enough experience. Now, counselling psychology courses may also require applicants to have completed a basic counselling skills course or gained relevant experience with a particular client group. For some of these courses, there's a minimum age limit of between 21 and 26. So again, age does come into it here, but clearly you need to check websites for course information. And the best source of information for accredited courses is the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, or BACkup for short. So definitely worth having a look on that site. For health psychology, if you're interested in working in one of the areas persuading individuals to lead more healthy lives, it would be relevant to gain experience of one of the many pressure groups, such as Action on Smoking and Health, or ASH as it's known, or perhaps the British Heart Foundation, or volunteering with the Health Promotion Department of a council. If your interest lies more towards encouraging take-up of health services, working with a patient group in some capacity would be good, such as getting involved with your local health watch group. You could start by contacting your local GP surgery to see what action's going on in your local area. Clearly, hospitals or hospice-based experience is also going to be useful, as health psychologists also help hospitals and similar organisations to understand and respond to the psychological needs of patients and their families. So volunteering, healthcare support roles, project research worker roles, they're all really good and really relevant. Now, the prospect job profiles that I've included the URLs in on this slide are also worth looking at for detailed information about where these roles are, what they entail, and they do contain good advice about relevant experience. So, clinical, what sort of experience should you be looking for? I've basically put it down in two stages. The first one, where many of you might already have been gaining experience as undergraduates, and the second stage, post-graduation. Now, I apologise that the dashboard is covering some of the information on this slide, but when I send them to you, you won't have that there obscuring it. So you need to gain experience in the sorts of settings, clearly where clinical psychologists work: hospitals, daycare units, community, multi-professional teams, and working with the kind of clients that clinical psychologists will see. For example, adults with mental health problems, older people, those with learning difficulties, children with psychological or behavioural problems, and people who have substance abuse problems, and offenders. It's a wide, broad mix. Voluntary experience and related paid posts, such as nursing assistant, support worker, care assistant, or other opportunities in relevant settings, will all help to build your skills and your understanding of the profession. So they're all valued. Once you've graduated, there are also opportunities under the government initiative of increasing access to psychological therapies, IACT, for paid employment roles, such as psychological wellbeing practitioner. So if you're looking for paid roles now, then clearly the kinds of things that you should be looking out for at the moment are trainee psychological wellbeing practitioner and graduate mental health worker. Very, very similar roles where you're working one-to-one with clients with low-intensity mental health problems, usually in a primary care setting, not hospital-based. You might want to look at healthcare assistant, support worker, substance misuse worker, or mental health setting roles. The kind of experience you can get is very, very broad, and you've got to start somewhere. So be prepared to look for roles which are minimum wage, pay by the hour. But you're really beginning to relate to and understand working with clients in a planned and documented fashion, which is really important. Similarly, occupational therapy assistant roles in mental health or learning difficulties settings, or LOVUS therapists with autistic children. LOVUS is a behavioural intervention programme, in case you weren't familiar with that term, developed at UCLA. So any of these sorts of roles, really, really good starting points. For volunteering, well, consider unpaid work in a clinical psychology department. Again, you might have been starting to do this as an undergrad, but you can look to carry this on as you've graduated. But I do emphasise they tend to be unpaid. Similarly, unpaid assistance to a psychology researcher at university. Use your networks, talk to academics that you know, and ask them if they need any help with their research. Volunteering for mental health charities such as befriender or mentoring roles, telephone helplines are all really good. Now, the little booklet covers that I put here, the Manchester Mental Health and Social Care Trust Health and Wellbeing Service, bit of a mouthful there, they produce these really helpful downloadable leaflets covering adult and children's services in Manchester. So great as possible sources of contacts for volunteering and work experience opportunities. If you want to find out more about the different types of counselling and meet a therapist, then the directory web page that I put up there is really useful starting point, and you can search for therapists working in with all sorts of different client groups so that you can meet them, arrange to chat to them, find out a bit more about what they do. Just recently I was lucky enough to meet with Dr. Catherine Berry. She's a senior lecturer in clinical psychology here at Manchester, and she forms part of the selection panel for the DClin Psych. She gave us some really useful advice. Myself and Amanda chatted to her. She said that clinical psychologists at the university do take on students to do voluntary work for them. However, it's more likely that a clinical psychologist will take on a master's level student. If you're just completing your undergraduate, you should look to work for maybe a PhD student and support their research instead. So it's still worth asking relevant academics in your department before you leave university and lose contact. Alternatively, let the academics let the school admin teams know if they're looking for someone, but be proactive. Can be useful to have previously volunteered for a university academic to get yourself known as a route to be taken on as an assistant psychologist or a research assistant. Okay. A PhD in a clinical area is equivalent to having a research assistant role when applying. However, the applicant may need to gain another year of experience to get the client contact. PhD applicants do tend to do quite well at Manchester. A significant number of applicants will have a PhD, or the equivalent of 3 years research and client experience post-graduation. This isn't the case everywhere though, so applicants, you really need to do your research and find out what individual universities ask for. Catherine also confirmed that good references are really important as well when you're applying because it's so competitive for the DClin Psych. So a reference from a clinical psychologist is going to carry a lot more weight than, say, a nursing manager, for example, as the former can comment on more relevant aspects of your work. A master's qualification can also help you stand out too, but as long as all other aspects are in place as well, it can provide additional time to secure volunteering experience. An MRes is typically viewed as more academically relevant than a master's qualification. You can also do an MRes part-time. And I said, I have to stress, this is Manchester's view and Catherine's view. So find out what other universities have to say about the matter. So very briefly, a profile of a successful applicant for the DClin Psych that I interviewed recently, just to give you a flavour of their experience and how it's built up and built up. So typical helpline advisor, Anxiety UK, great experience, and a lot of psychology students do get work experience there. The student then worked with clients using self-referred CBT computer guidance, so they got real insight into CBT, and then went on and did a support worker role, which obviously inspired them and motivated them to want to go on to do a PhD in schizophrenia. So just one profile there, but many other ways of getting in. Okay, so yeah. Right. Other vacancy and volunteering carrying sites up here, excuse me, voice is going. I trawled through Careers Link. Some of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with our vacancy carrying service. And here were some of the organisations and charities that advertised recently looking for students who want to do support worker role, research worker role, all sorts of different analyst roles as well. So I've just given you a flavour of some of the organisations that you might want to approach, some of which I'm sure you've heard of, but some might be new to you. And the roles they're advertising were things like substance misuse worker, support worker, rehabilitation worker, mental health recovery workers. There's a whole plethora of different titles that can be quite overwhelming, but all of them will provide you with good client-focused experience. So because different organisations use different job titles, don't be put off. Have a look at them. They'll all give you good experience. Cyclic's a good website as well, has a good sort of vacancy roundup for mental health related work, so that's worth having a look at too. And Turning Point as well, which is on there. I spoke to a recruiter from Turning Point recently at another event. It's a social enterprise that recruits nurses, therapists, clinicians to work in hospitals and healthcare centres. And they do recruit a lot of psychologists and support workers. Now, his advice to me was, you know, don't rule out support worker roles thinking, no, I want to go straight on to an assistant role. Once you're in place as a support worker with any of these organisations, they tend to advertise assistant psychologist posts internally to people already working for them. So if you're employed as a support worker, you'll get first dibs at seeing those ads for assistant psychologist roles, and they will only advertise those roles externally if no internal applicants come forward. So that's really true for all of the experience I'm talking about today. You know, once you're in an organisation, you're in a good place to apply for roles that don't always get externally advertised. Healthwatch Manchester, I've mentioned that already. That's a really another good organisation to get involved in, you know, it's a statutory watchdog, and their role is to ensure that local health and social care services are good experiences for people. So you do a lot of research, a lot of surveying. So again, really good experience for would-be clinicals and health psychologists. Now, if you're really passionate about something and you just can't find a charity or an organisation or a website that's advertising opportunities, then NHS Choices is a really good place to look at, because what they have up there are lots of self-help groups. So again, consider it generating your own work experience or starting your own self-help or support group as well if you feel you've had an experience that you can you have something you can contribute to. So again, this can really be invaluable and help you make you stand out, getting involved in or running your own self-help group. So NHS Choices is a great place of finding these things. I've got eating disorders self-help groups up there, but they cover everything from bipolar to anxiety, depression, etc., etc. These two websites as well, worth knowing about. They might be familiar to you, they might be new to you, but these are our careers aggregator sites. And although you know, it's good to use well-known sites such as the BPS website, then these will trawl from the private sector, charities, and the NHS, and I've given you examples up there of psychological wellbeing practitioner trainee roles, so it's worth knowing about those too. Let's move on to educational psychology now. Okay, remember it is a very quick whistle stop tour through. So really, really important to gain experience with the 0 to 19 age group in educational, social care or community settings. Whatever experience you gain, you need to show knowledge and understanding of, you know, the process of child and adolescent development and learning, and be aware of relevant policy and practice that goes on around these areas, and a specific understanding of educational psychology services. So you have to keep these sort of things in mind when you're looking for work experience. So school-based settings, kind of experience you could gain would be in mainstream schools, special educational needs and physical disabilities units, pupil referral units as well for children with emotional and behavioural problems. But also in social care settings, you could look at community settings, children's charities, children's homes, welfare agencies, drug action teams, youth clubs, playgroups, advice lines, youth offending teams, children's centres and victim support. All of these, we're told by admissions tutors to the doctoral training, are good places to look for. And roles could include classroom assistant, learning support mentors. In reality, a lot of people, half the applicants to the doctoral training are still qualified teachers, and that is a reality. Or people who have worked in educational social work backgrounds. But, you know, if you really don't want to go down this route, what you've got to do is make your experience count and really try and show how you've applied your psychology in your support worker role. So look to do things like, you know, set up an anti-bullying campaign, for example, or get involved in inset days where Ed Sykes might be coming along and talking to the staff about spotting signs of abuse and, you know, welfare issues. So really be proactive in making the experience work for you. Some key websites down there as well, just for you to look at and to gain further information about applying for the educational psychology doctoral training, and also where teaching support and education-related vacancies are advertised. And again, I did the trawling through Careers Link for you. So here are some great organisations that we've recently advertised. Children and Young People Now is a great aggregator site as well. So if you are looking to build up experience in areas as broad as admin or you know, welfare roles, educational support roles, they have hundreds and hundreds of different vacancies. So it's really well worth having a look at their site. Okay. I'm speeding along a little bit now because I know that time is running out, and you can follow up these things afterwards on those websites. For those of you interested in forensic psychology, again, always check out the requirements of course providers for the accredited MSc courses. But you've got to gain experience in a forensic setting. This is really so vital for this role. If you've never set foot in a prison before or a secure unit, it can be quite a shock to the system. So you've really got to feel comfortable and at ease in these environments. So really important to get yourself into a prison for all the right reasons, obviously, before you take this any further. But I've given you some other examples as well of the kind of settings, forensic charities, victim support, and NHS secure hospitals, all worth approaching to see if you can either shadow, which again can be quite difficult in these areas because of risk assessment, etc. But at the very least, if you can meet professionals who are working as psychology assistants or forensic psychologists, you can really talk to them about the challenges and the rewards of the job. Okay. So what you learn from your experience, your ability to relate it to underpinning psychological theories, and your ability to analyse and communicate what you've learned are always going to be more important than the actual amount of experience that you can offer to an admissions tutor. After you've graduated, of course, the ideal position would be an assistant psychologist in a prison or a forensic setting, i.e. within the criminal justice system, before you progress on to your masters. The prison service does employ psychology assistants to support the work of forensic psychologists, but these can be extremely competitive. So again, I've recently seen a load of jobs advertising for interventions facilitator. Now these are band 4 jobs, a little bit like support worker roles, but great because again you're in a forensic team and you're building up experience. But also researcher and analyst roles. And remember that often jobs are advertised internally, so you can progress and get promoted internally. So don't rule out these very entry-level support roles. Other things: counselling, advice, referral, assessment and thorough care, or CARAT, drug worker in the prison service. It's a new one to me, but I found a few of those jobs advertised recently. Working in the National Probation Service as a volunteer, NHS drug and alcohol rehabilitation services provided to rehab centres, police stations and prisons. Youth work as well, for example, getting involved in youth offending services. So contact your local youth service or council for that. Obviously Google is your friend here. And also look for social work initiatives linked to offending and prevention, such as project work, community worker posts, all good experience. And for volunteering, well, national support groups that work with offenders, such as Revolving Doors, the Prisoners Advice Service, and NACRO, are ones that are well documented. It's also worth having a look at the Howard League for Penal Reform. Their website is a mine of information about what's happening in the prison service and the forensic settings, and does have links to other forensic charities and organisations. So that's a really good site as well. Okay. Bottom of the screen here, I've got something called Work with Offenders. This website's really great. It spells out the full range of careers available to working with offenders. So again, if forensic psychology is something that you're really keen on, but you're not 100% sure you want to do it, then it's got all of the other roles that involve working with offenders. So a really good one-stop shop site there. And again, here's some of the organisations we've advertised recently on Careers Link. All right, in the last few minutes, I'm just going to briefly talk about occupational. This is one of the hardest areas of psychology to be specific about, because in reality, almost any professional experience is going to be relevant, including self-employment, because what you've got to show is an understanding of how organisations work, function, and can be affected by change. I put lots of links here for different vacancy sources in different sectors, as relevant experience can be so broad. But as always, start out by looking at the occupational psychologist profile on the Prospects website, and clearly our own website, Careers Link, where we have all of the live vacancies that we're advertising at the moment. I've also recommended the Find a Job graduate job search section of our website, where we have loads of links to vacancy carrying sites for, well, I think we've got over 200 different vacancy carrying sites for different sectors, including ones that perhaps are quite obvious to you, like HR, recruitment consultancy work. But, you know, again, bear in mind that psychologists work in lots of different sectors as occupational psychologists. So, as I said, they work in a range of different settings, including private, public and government organisations, training or management consultancies, psychometric test publishers and human resources. So relevant experience can be gained in any of these areas. You need to demonstrate an understanding of how organisations operate and the change and how it impacts on their business. So the current leave or remain in the EU referendum is a really hot potato, a hot topic for a lot of organisations, and how that might impact on their business. So again, it's good to keep abreast with things that are happening in the economy and in the business world as well. You need to have an insight into human behaviour in the workplace and understand how organisational psychologists can contribute to these processes. So HR assistant posts, recruitment consultant posts, and general management posts and training schemes are all really good, relevant experience prior to applying for the master's role in organisational psychology, and also afterwards. Okay, so you know, have a look at some of those websites, and also the Division of Occupational Psychology has a really good booklet there which covers profiles of people working in that area. So I'm going to wrap up now with a final slide, just really reiterating some of the things that I've mentioned before. It's important to network as well. Experience can be advertised, but an awful lot of people will make their own experience. So by networking, by contacting alumni through LinkedIn, and Amanda talked about alumni in her talk previous to this. So maybe have a look at that. Volunteer, doit.org.uk is a brilliant site for national volunteering opportunities. Just put your postcode in and then search for the area you're interested in. Join relevant bodies and professional bodies for the area of psychology you're interested in, and you know, go along to any conferences if you can. Meet psychologists as they're doing their daily work or attending conferences. We have a dedicated psychology Facebook page where we put updated work experience, and make sure you're on that. And also consider the Manchester Graduate Programme. I'm going to be saying a bit more about that in the job search session after this. But again, if you're looking for experience, these are great 3 to 18-month paid positions in and around Manchester. We can build up your work experience and add to your skills. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much for listening. Happy to take any questions now, or you can email me afterwards. Okay. Can I get, so I've got a question, can I get any of these links? Are they clickable? Yeah, all of these links, what we're going to do is put this talk onto our website, which is careers@manchester.ac.uk. And if you go into the Get Advice section and Talks Download, we'll have the slides on there, which will all have, you'll be able to click on these links and open them all. Okay. Could you put the slides with the links on Facebook? Yeah, we can do that, not a problem. Okay. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.